think we can start with my introduction. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our workshop, Safe and Sustainable by Design Scenarios of Advanced Incremental Innovations. So first of all, I would like to say that this workshop is organized in the frame of the NSC community, and more specifically in the SSbD Innovation and Regulation Working Group of the NSC community. The NSC stands for Network for Safety and Sustainability of Chemicals and Materials. As a network, it is an open platform for collaboration, dialogue, and exchange of knowledge among the different players, actors involved in the process of ensuring safer and more sustainable innovation of chemicals and materials. So if you are not yet part of this community, I'm encouraging you to become part of this really dynamic community. This workshop is a genuine collaboration among 4 European projects from the network, more specifically from the Resilience 22 and 24 clusters. The projects are AlChemiSSts, DESIDERATA, Planets, and Sunrise, with Planets acting as the project leading this workshop. The underlying idea of the workshop is that not all innovation scenarios in SMEs and large industry are the same. SSbD assessments and decisions are always influenced by the innovation context, and therefore they are undertaken on a case-by-case basis. Fortunately, the current JRC SSbD guidance from the European Commission and also the Cefic SSbD framework leave plenty of room for some tailoring of the SSbD approach so that it can fit different innovation scenarios. But how should one describe a scenario and which tailored approach fits? These are the leading questions we'll try to answer in this first nanosafety cluster workshop today. The workshop will test different aspects that describe a scenario, but always using knowledge that is available in the very early stages of innovation. Such aspects include, for example, the professional environment, if it is a startup, SME, or large industry, the sector of application, the available research and development budget, or if we're dealing with incremental or advanced innovations. These aspects will then be tested in real world case studies, which are provided by innovators from the 4 projects. These case studies will be the focus of the discussions that will take place during the breakout groups. And this will not be the only workshop. This is just the first workshop, but it will be followed by a second workshop organized in September or October later this year. The second workshop will be shaped by today's results, and it will go much more into depth of identifying and distilling archetypical SSbD scenarios and in attaching tailored SSbD approaches to each of these scenarios. The final goal is to shape the outcomes of the 2 workshops as a white paper or a peer-reviewed publication, and we really hope that you can be actively involved in the entire process. So today is the first step in our journey towards evolving the concept of SSbD scenarios, and we really hope you'll stay with us also for the next steps. Next slide presents the agenda of the workshop. So our next speaker will be Iranzo Garmendia Aguirre from the Joint Research Center, who will provide the European Commission's view on safe and sustainable by design. Then Wendel Wolleben from BASF will present in detail the concept of SSbD scenarios and what we're actually intending to achieve with this workshop. Then we would split in 4 case study breakout groups. Each of the breakout groups will focus on one real case study from each of the 4 projects supporting this workshop. And then we'll have a structured discussion of the different aspects and questions underlying the methodology, which Wendel will present in his presentation. Then we'll have a short break, and this will be followed by reports from the breakout groups. The outcomes of the discussions will then feed a collective plenary discussion led by Carol Caldera from Ciensco, which will lead to our conclusions and identifying next steps. This is the agenda of the workshop today. With this, I finish my introduction and I pass the floor to Iranzo to present to us the view of the European Commission on SSbD.
So thank you very much, Daniel, for the introduction, and thank you as well to the NSC community and Planets for inviting us to present today. I would like to start my presentation, and I hope it works. We're talking a bit about what is our view when we are talking about scenarios, especially in the context of the SSbD. And in order to illustrate that, I decided to put an example, this climbing sport that I hope that more or less we are all familiar with. And the SSbD needs to be seen as the mountain. And the goal is to achieve safe and sustainable by design life cycles of chemicals and materials. This would be the summit, the top of the mountain. But how professionals start thinking about reaching the mountain is that they create a base camp where they define how who they are and how they want to reach the goal of reaching the summit. And according to that, they build a strategy that helps us to achieve this goal. Of course, we have more than one example. We can have the same group team that has the same base camp, but according to the definition of how they build the group, the expertise, for instance, of the climbers or the material that they have to climb, maybe the path that follow it's a bit different, and they follow other routes. And this can be extrapolated to the SSbD implementation as well. We can have other cases where, for instance, the group has already achieved one intermediate camp because they have done it in different periods of the year, and then their starting point might be a bit higher in the mountain, and then they might follow the same path than the other ones. But always the goal is the same, to achieve safe and sustainable by design life cycles of chemicals and materials. And we can have other cases where the base camp is completely different. Let's think about, for instance, when we are talking about breakthrough or disruptive innovations, and they have developed a technology where they can reach this goal only in one step. So basically what we are saying is that we all have the same goal, that it's to achieve the summit, and to explain how we have achieved, with whom we have done it, and how we have achieved this proof of safe and sustainable by design life cycles of chemicals and materials. But how we start the base camp, who we are, where we are, why we are here, what we want to achieve, what we are going to do to achieve this goal, and with whom we are collaborating might be different. And therefore, as well, the intermediate steps, the iterations might be different in these cases. So this is already something that we tried to illustrate when we developed the methodological guidance, and especially the scoping analysis. With the scoping analysis, we wanted to illustrate this, how the implementation, contextualize the implementation of the SSbD by answering these kind of questions. Why we are doing it, what is what we are doing, with whom we are collaborating, and how we are going to prove it. And like talking about the basis, the starting point of the implementation of the framework. And the scoping analysis and the methodological guidance as well highlights some of the fundamentals of the framework. Like it is an holistic approach, so we want to integrate safety and sustainability with this life cycle approach, life cycle thinking, from the beginning to the end of the innovation. And I want to go a little bit on the details of the scoping analysis so we can understand how these scenarios or these cases could be built on. So we start with the system definition. And the system definition first answers the question, why? Why are we applying the framework? We are applying the framework because we want to prove that something is safe and sustainable by design. So we are innovating and we want to prove that this is safe and sustainable. But also we want to know why, the animation goes faster than me, sorry for that. So imagine that we are innovating a process and that we want to improve the safety and sustainability because we have spotted that there is a problem, but we can have as well an innovation of a process, that it's a new process, and we want as well to demonstrate that this new process is safe and sustainable. But we need to understand to what we are applying this framework, because we don't have to forget that the SSbD has to be implemented adopting the entire life cycle perspective. That means that we cannot say, when looking only at the process, oh, sorry for that, that I don't know, how can I stop the, okay, I go back, sorry. So it's not only that we look at the process, but we also need to look at the chemical, the product, because this as well give us information about the safety and sustainability and other processes like the synthesis of the chemical material and also the end of life of the product in which the chemical and material is incorporated. And this brings us to another important element of the scoping analysis, that is the life cycle actors' involvement. The more engagement we have with the life cycle actors, the more certainty we will have in this skeleton of the SSbD system, and the more comprehensive and robust will be the assessment and the proof of the safety and sustainability of the entire life cycle of the chemical material. Then, once we have defined what is the system that we want to assess, we have the question of what are we going to do in order, in the cases especially where we are trying to innovate, to improve something that we have spotted that there is a problem with regards to the safety and sustainability, but can be as well other aspects where we are improving, for instance, the functionality, and we want still to ensure that the safety and sustainability is there. And you are familiar with this figure, but I want to explain a little bit better what it means, because this might be a bit crowded. So what it means is that we start with the system, and let's imagine that we are innovating at the process. We have decided that there is a problem here, or that we want to innovate the process, so we do our process design, and of course this innovation will affect the safety and sustainability performance of our process. But we need to bear in mind that when we are doing that, we might have some indirect or subsequent impacts or effects. These changes will affect, for instance, how the product is used and also the end of life of the product. So this needs to be considered when we are talking about the innovation. This might require as well a product redesign. Another example similar to this is that we start with a process that we want to change. And of course, as we said, it will have an impact on the product, but it might be the case that we are innovating the process by changing the chemical of concern. In this case, we have to think that we are already doing a molecular redesign. In this case, a substitution might be with an existing chemical material or a new chemical. And in this case, of course, the safety and sustainability performance will be affected by this molecular design, and this needs to be considered as well as the entire life cycle of this new chemical material. And therefore, we will need to start considering on another SSbD system. This again, as in the case of the definition of the system, because it goes very linked, the more alignment, the more engagement, the more collaboration we have with the different life cycle actors, the more certainty we will have on how these innovations affect to each other and how we need to build this SSbD system. Last but not least, when we are talking about now the how, do we ensure that the innovation is safe and sustainable, or that the innovation is safer and more sustainable than the reference that we have? The same applies with the assessment. We might start with, let's say, the process, and we know as well how this affects the product manufacturing. So we are looking here, the concern might be the safety, the exposure of the workers in the workplaces, and we are looking at that. We might be as well looking at the environmental sustainability and the socioeconomic sustainability, but we need to bear in mind that this doesn't cover the entire safe and sustainable by design framework approach. We need to also know what is the chemical material that we are using in these processes and in these products for the hazard characterization of the chemical material, but we also need to understand how the product is going to use, who is going to use, it's only industrial or it's professional or it's consumer use, and how as well this will impact the safety and sustainability, and so on and so forth. We will need to cover the other processes as well in which these chemicals materials are involved, and therefore there is a potential exposure for the human, for the environment, and for the planet. And again, like in the case of the previous elements, the more engagement we have, the more collaboration we have with the different actors in the life cycle, the more certainty we will have, more data, more information, and more robust assessment for the safety and the sustainability. So, in conclusion, the scoping analysis, it's an attempt to help us to understand what is we want to achieve. So we want to achieve, again, that we have safe and sustainable life cycles of chemicals and materials. Therefore, it is very important, this life cycle thinking and the engagement of all the actors in the life cycle. The scoping analysis also helps us to understand what is our starting point, what is our scenario, what is our entry point to the framework, and it also tells us that this needs to be in an iterative manner from the beginning up to the end of the innovation in a transparent and trustable manner. So this is more or less, in a nutshell, what we understand as scoping and the direction in which we are working. So we have some elements that help us to identify what we want to achieve and what are our starting points. So again, the life cycle SSbD system, the innovation that, of course, it doesn't only cover the redesign, but also what kind of innovation we have, be it chemical material innovation, process innovation, product innovation, but also the type of innovation that we are doing, whether it's for disruptive innovation or less knowledge about what is going to happen might be the case with regards to the safety, the sustainability, but also with the performance of the innovation, or might be an incremental innovation where we might have more information. And also the maturity of innovation, right? If we start from very low TRLs, again, data, information, engagement with life cycle actors, and therefore the certainty and the robustness of the assessment will be different. And then, of course, the insurance, the proof that the entire system is safe and sustainable. And in this direction is where we are building, whether we can build scenarios according to these elements, and of course, including the important element that is the involvement of the life cycle actors, because in the end, we have to bear in mind that the SSbD implementation, it's not a single actor exercise, but the entire life cycle actors' success. And with that, I finish my presentation. This is just a slide illustrating the developments so far in the context of the SSbD framework. We are now in 2025. We are working on the revision of the framework. There will be a public consultation starting mid-July till I think it's mid-September. After that, we will continue working on the revision of the framework. In the meantime, will be a third edition of the bootcamp. And in December, we will have a stakeholder workshop where the revised framework together with the new recommendation will be presented to the stakeholders. And then it's not here, but in beginning of 2026, we will have as well a revised methodological guidance according to the revised framework. And with that, yes, I would like to thank to all my SSbD JRC colleagues, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions to Iranzu? Otherwise, we continue. I don't see any hands raised. Therefore, I share again my screen. And we continue now with Wendel Wolleben from BSF, talking about the SSbD scenarios. Just give me a second, Wendel, that I give you the rights.
Okay, I think you gave me the rights already.
Perfect.
So, following up to Iranzu's presentation, we will now introduce the concept of SSbD scenarios, and for that we also take this slide here as another starting point. And that is the perspective of the innovation manager at an SME or an industry. And there are two starting points to consider. On the left-hand side, you see that the budget is limited. There is a strategic decision, and just like the EU makes it for the Horizon 2020 program, every company makes it. There is a fixed R&D budget, and then different ideas, different projects compete for funding. We all know this process. And on the right-hand side, you see how there is a successive funnel for selecting ideas, starting from gate 2, entering the business case phase, passing then to gate 3, to hopefully get approval to enter the lab phase, then again evaluation and assessment and selection prioritization at gate 4 to enter pilot phase, and again selection gate 5 to enter launch. The empirical value in chemical industry is that about 1% of ideas pass all those gates, which means that round about 30% probability of passing the gate, which implies that you have to convince people that your project is the best. Now, we want to use not only, as is conventionally done in the industry, the business case, but also the results from the SSbD scoping that was just explained by Iranzu, to attach to this project an SSbD scenario. I'm sorry, I didn't want to move forward. And via that SSbD scenario, we want to enable the innovation manager to tailor the SSbD approach for the ensuing lab phase. So by this process, we will enable the right gate decisions to select really the most promising projects for gate 3, because these projects will have a tailored SSbD approach that fits to the specific case. And the SSbD scenarios will be our tool to do this selection and tailoring. So the way that we want to develop the SSbD scenarios, they shall help us to tailor the SSbD approach within the tiered framework. And the goal is that SSbD is not just another burden, but it shall increase the overall competitiveness. So it's also not an assessment, but it's mainly a tool, a support in budget planning and in adjusting the resources. It has a side benefit, and that's the bottom part of this slide here, that we can also use all the decisions that we are proposing here to refine the expectation for the commercial benefit. And this is typically called the ECV, expected commercial value, where we can include all the considerations, how SSbD impacts this value. And ECV is a highly established measure in industry to make an assessment of innovation pipelines. And in this manner, we can also show how the decisions that we are proposing increase the value of the pipeline by additionally introducing the SSbD implementation. Now, for today's workshop, within the Planets project, we have developed a description of the scenario in these 6 categories that you see here. The first 4 can be filled from the SSbD scoping. The other 2 are filled from the business case. Now, from the SSbD scoping, first of all, we have asked all of the 4 projects that have nominated innovators for the breakout teams to make an assessment of the novelty. And we asked people to take a scientific technical perspective, just like you would do for a patent submission. Because you don't get a patent if it's not sufficiently novel. And it might be truly novel, it might be novel in a certain aspect, but not in another. Speaking in the language of the metaphor that Iranzu used, sometimes you want to climb Mount Everest, sometimes you just want to make a friendly walk to the hill next door. That is an assessment of novelty. Then the next question that we have asked everyone is about exposure. So what is the anticipated level of contact, both to humans and the environment? And it could be at professional level or consumer level. And we have noted that this impacts the expected SSbD pull in the respective industries a lot. And we have asked people to explore the sector-specific knowledge that they have on the anticipated level of contact. Next thing, we ask about severity. So to screen for potential health or environmental impacts that could arise from exposure. And again, this is not an assessment, but it simply helps to adjust, to tailor the screening that would be done by NAMs in the lab phase, depending on the expected concerns of health impacts. And of course, sustainability needs to be assessed at some point, and probably at some point in the project an LCA will be recommended. But depending on the answers we're getting here, one would tailor the approach such that the system boundary and also the stage where an LCA makes sense can be adjusted. Then from the business case, we asked people to give us an idea of the scope. Is it a small project? Is it a big project? Are you looking for limited tonnage or high tonnage? Because this has an impact on the return on investment of SSbD measures. And this is finally what we will need to convince management to introduce all this. And finally, we ask people about immediacy, because immediacy indicates whether market launch is likely in the short term or only later, for instance, after IP generation and IP patent submission by the innovators. You will see this again in the breakouts. And here you see the specific questions that we ask under these headlines. And I will not go through all of this because we will have the opportunity to do this in the breakouts. But maybe if I just go to the exposure part here, we asked people to describe the sector of intended use. And then we asked people to make a selection who the users are. Is it business to consumers, business to professionals, or business to business? We also asked people if the innovation, could be a chemical or a material, is an intermediate that is consumed and reacted downstream, or whether it remains the same chemical in the next steps of the value chain. And we asked people if there is an intended use that is environmentally dispersive. So I'm not going through the details now because you will see it in the breakouts. Instead, I'll show you how it looks like in a case. That is the case of an incremental innovation in plastics for packaging. And you can see that or for this case, we selected here all the different entries. So again, on the example of exposure, goes into packaging, business to business. It's not being chemically reacted, so it stays the same in the next steps of the value chain, and there is no intended use that is environmentally dispersive. And you can see that we added numbers now here, but the scope, the R&D budget, 250,000, 2 years duration until time to market, relatively high TRL, and certain relatively high probabilities of commercial success. With these assumptions, we can then also take numbers from the business case about the budgets and expected incomes, and we can then also calculate how different SSbD scenarios, a pessimistic SSbD push scenario, an enthusiastic SSbD pull scenario, or a moderate SSbD pull with limited trade-offs, a lean implementation scenario, how they influence the expected commercial value of this project and the return on investment on introducing the SSbD measures. I did not explain right now how we did this calculation because it's beyond scope of today's workshop. Instead, the focus of today's workshop is all on the SSbD scenario description, but I wanted to give you an outlook into how these informations can be used to make the results tangible. There will also be a second workshop, like Daniel just said, and in the last session of today's workshop, we will have an open discussion on this already, but we will have a full scope on this tailoring in the second workshop. So for instance, again, on the example of the exposure that I just explained before, depending on the sector and depending on whether it's more business to consumer than business to business, we have experienced among the Planets partners that developed this approach that this influences the SSbD pull a lot. And via the SSbD pull, as you just saw on the example on the slide before, it has a big impact on the level of SSbD investment that is justified. So we'll come back to this in the final session of today's workshop. It just shows you how the different answers that you give to these questions in the scenario help us to tailor the SSbD approach to the specific case. So today we will focus on 4 cases, and we will check if that description of scenarios is workable and adequate. And then in the second workshop, we will take 4 and more cases because we had more volunteers than we could unfortunately take for the breakouts today. So we will have a larger number of cases maybe. And then in the second workshop, we will focus on this tailoring and how that tailoring rules are workable and adequate. I think that's the end for me, and I hand it over to Leah to introduce us to the breakouts.
Yes, thank you. So I'm just going to give you some feedback on and instructions on the different breakout groups. So really the goal of this workshop is that we have this table of questions following the NSC, which Wendell just presented. So the novelty, the exposure, the sustainability, the scope, and the immediacy. And the goal of today really is to get feedback on these questions. You know, keeping in mind that this is early innovation, and we want to know, are we asking the right questions? Should things be modified? Should things be clarified? So the case studies are just a tool to get feedback, more practical feedback on the methodology. So we want to focus on that. And we're going to do it in a type of interview style way in which the different case studies, you're going to be split into 4 different case studies, depending on what you want. So we have on the project AlChemiSSts, they'll be looking at firefighter soils used using safe alternative to hazardous flame retardant additives. If you're gonna, you can also follow DESIDERATA. Here, Dr. Anastasia Mushovi will present a little bit for monolithos in the geopolymer for construction. Then we have from the planet, Stefan Haid from Wacker will present a case study on surfactant in paint. And from Sunrise, there'll be a case study on post-harvest food treatment based on safer microencapsulated oils. So the way the breakout will work, that will be split. Right after my explanation, you're going to choose the breakout session that you are interested in. During the breakout session, each case study lead that has been assigned will give you a pitch, an 8 to 10 minute pitch on the case study. So you have a bit of idea of the case study. And then every of the case study leads will share sort of the table from the different case studies that we have prepared in advance. And the idea is that if we go to the next slide, if I can you go to the next slide? So the idea is, so for instance, if you think that for instance, you take novelty and the explanation for novelty is not clear, then you put in the Google, we'll share a Google Doc link where all your comments can be placed, and we hope that you put all the comments there. So as we walk through the different questions that and the case studies will explain why they gave that answer, so you get a little bit extra information on how the different decisions that the case study leads had for each of the questions. You will be able to provide for feedback on the bottom of the Google Sheet. So every case study has a Google Doc where we are collecting feedback on the clarity of the process. So this is a process workshop. So for instance, if you had a question on 1.1 that wasn't clarity, you would put 1.1 question was not clear, give more explanation or something like that. And we will do that as the case study
your
lead.
microphone switched up. Sorry that I interrupted you, but last 30 seconds we did not hear you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, is it better now?
Okay. You have.
I was able to hear you.
Yes, we can. We can hear you.
Matis, I think it was your connection because we were able to hear her.
Oh, sorry.
I think so.
No, but thank you for interrupting. But I also see Anastasia. Do you have a question? Yeah, sorry.
Yes, sorry for interruption.
No.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Concerning the links that you saw in the previous slides for the breaks out. Yes, that's it. The link to working sheet. Where is this available? I mean, maybe I have probably missed this.
No, we can put them all in the. Should we put them all in the chat?
Okay, thank you.
I'll put them all in the chat here so everybody will have access. Maybe just put them now in the chat, depending on which case study you go. It's now in the chat. Maybe that's a better idea because I know Carla has that. If you go to the case study on the planets, I know Carla had difficulty with her chat. So if you're in her session in planets, all the comments have to be in this Google Doc. So maybe there's a better way to do it that everybody has now access. We have all the tables there for all the 4 case studies. And the idea is that if you go into one of these Google Docs at the bottom, you have, which section you have a comment to and what your comment is. And if you want to leave your name, in case you really want to be follow up with your comment, just provide it. You don't have to. But this is how we're going to do it. And that every case study will have a rapporteur, so somebody will come back. I know we've decided half will be the leads and the others will be the chairs. But the idea is that we just come back to what were the discussion points and what were the things named, the comments that were received, and maybe reflections from the case study leads if that's possible, because that's really good. We've done this with for each of the projects. They've been so grateful that they spend so much time with us filling this table. Maybe they can give us some reflection if that's possible. But that's it. We're going to go in the breakout rooms and with the different chairs. You have the tables there, the links to all the Google Docs. Maybe go choose whichever case study you want to go to, and we'll see you back in an hour, I think, and then we'll have a break, right, Beatrice? You come back here, we start the break, and then we resume with the comments, the reporter feedback.
I will just copy the.
Oh, Stefan has a question. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if anyone else has a problem, but for me, I have the problem that this Google sheet the page is blocked by our firewall, so by the company's firewall. So.
Oh no!
Yeah,
it works
the
with
moderator
Chrome.
will display it, and you will see, and you can.
You will see it because
comments.
we'll share our screen. So with each breakout, we'll start with a presentation from the case study, so you have a little bit of background, and that the screen will be shared. The only problem is that if you're in the planets, then the chat function doesn't work very well there. So then that will be an issue. Danielle, maybe you have another suggestion here.
No, it all it's gonna work. It's gonna work. I'm quite confident.
Perfect. Any other questions before instructions? Things are not clear?
Yes, that's me again.
No worries.
The Google Docs, it works for me, and as an advice, I use Chrome, if that also works for other colleagues, and the Internet Explorer. But I cannot find the link. I got the Google Doc, but not for the room.
No,
Yes,
that
the
will
room
be
are
split.
still not open.
Okay.
That's the
Yes.
reason.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to make sure that everybody has the instructions, and then we'll all
Okay,
break down.
sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
So then I think if you have AlChemist, you'll be with Martin. DESIDERATA, you'll be with me. The planets will be with Carla, and the sunrise will be with Danielle. So then we'll have the different chairs, and then we'll come back. Any other questions? Okay, we look forward to hearing your feedback on the methodology and the questions, and good luck.